Hello, U.S. history classes, and welcome to the final lesson for this week. Now, we're working our way through industrialization, and where we left off in the last lesson, we talked about some industrial leaders and we talked about some inventors and their new inventions. Today, we're going to pick up with that, and it's not that those guys are bad guys, but they get involved in some interesting business practices. And one of the business practices they get involved in are monopolies. So today we're going to talk about monopolies. We're going to talk about why monopolies are bad and why we end up breaking up monopolies. And this is one of my favorite lessons. I really have a good time with this. So I hope you guys are going to have a good time as well. Okay. Once again, take your own notes on this. We're going to be doing an acronym monopoly. So take your own notes on this. Be sure you are jotting some stuff down because there will be a quiz, and that quiz, once again, will not be open notes. Okay. So to start things off, we got an iconic image here. We got a Monopoly game. Okay. Now, how many people have played this game? Probably quite a few of you. Now, what is the purpose? What is the objective? Yeah, I know, to win. That's right. Okay. But how do you win? Yeah, you have the most money. Okay. The idea is to purchase properties and drive other players into bankruptcy. You want to have the most money by purchasing these properties. And if you have all the money, that makes you a monopoly. Now, I love asking this question. I love talking about this game because invariably people are like, yeah, friendships have been ruined over this, families have been ruined over this game, and things like that. And that is good because that is the whole purpose of the game. This game was created as a teaching tool. So if you come off of the game and you're like, man, I hate this game, da 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 da, that is the purpose. The game was created to teach people how monopolies end up taking advantage of the poor and giving incredible wealth to only one or a few individuals. So if you play this game and you end up getting mad, that was the point, because then you would see how bad monopolies are. All right. Now, let's get into the notes here. Now, one of the big monopolies that people begin to focus on is John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company. Okay. And again, I don't want you to think Rockefeller's a bad guy because he does a lot of good with his money. But he's the only one in charge, or he was the only one in charge of the oil industry at one time. And we'll talk about why that is bad in the notes today. All right. Not specifically for him, but why monopolies are bad in the notes today. So we're going to use the acronym monopoly. All right. Now, a monopoly we know is one person. Ideally, what you would like, the first M, is you want more than one owner and more than one investor. We call that a corporation. And in all honesty, that's kind of what we're going for, more than one person. However, I will point out that sometimes the corporation can become the monopoly because they're the only corporation in town. All right. So the reason we begin this way is just keep thinking we want more than one. That's what we want. Now, originally, monopolies were called trusts. That's the O, the first O. Originally, monopolies were called trusts. And I love pointing this out because that's how clever people were. Because what do you think when you think of trust? You think of trust, like trust us. It's okay. Trust us. Trust us with your money. Trust us with your business. Everything's going to be okay. All right. So originally, monopolies were called trusts because that's what we wanted people to do. We wanted people to trust them. Okay. Or what they wanted people to do. They wanted people to trust them. It's okay. Now, underneath the surface, though, the monopolies need to eliminate all other competition. That becomes their goal, is they want to eliminate all other competition. Why? So they can be the only supplier of a specific good or service. All right. And why would you want to be the only supplier of a specific good or service? Because that means you get all the money. Okay. So in this need to eliminate all of the competition and be the only supplier of a specific good or service, they do that by driving competitors out of business. That's the purpose. And this is why monopolies become bad. this need to eliminate all the other competition so they become the only supplier of a specific good or service, and they drive other competitors out of business. This is why it becomes bad. Now, I like to use Walmart in this scenario. Okay. Walmart moves into a town. What does Walmart do to get people to come to their store? In fact, they used to have ad campaigns about this. They lower prices. Okay. And that's where the trouble starts. Monopolies will originally lower prices. Now, if they lower prices, that also means they have to lower wages as well. But they always promise to raise wages once they start making money. Okay? And like I said, this is where the trouble starts. So Walmart comes into town, they lower prices to get people to come to Walmart. Pretty soon everybody's coming to Walmart. What's happening to the other stores? They're going out of business. Mom and pop stores. Anybody go to Kmart recently? Nope. Okay. So all these other stores start closing. And pretty soon, when Walmart's the only game in town, what's Walmart going to start doing to its prices? Raising the prices. Okay. And there's the problem. All right. They liquidate the competitors and start raising prices again. And pretty soon, consumers are like, well, we're just not going to go to that store. We'll go somewhere else. And when they look around, there is nobody else. So they have to go to that store. Now, what about the workers? Since the prices are going up, that means wages are going to go up as well, right? Nope, because the monopoly is making money. And it realizes it can get people to work for it for low wages. So why raise wages if people are willing to work for the low wages and the company's making money? So in the end, this is why we have to get rid of monopolies, is they hurt consumers and workers. They hurt consumers because we have to pay high prices because they run all the other businesses out of town and we have to go to them. They hurt workers because they promise to raise wages, but they really don't. Okay, and that's why monopolies are bad, in this need to drive the competitors out of business. So they're the only ones in town making money, and they've eliminated that competition. Ultimately, it's going to hurt us as consumers and it's going to hurt us as workers, and that's why we need to get rid of monopolies. Okay, now some of the big monopolies. U.S. Steel was a monopoly. Standard Oil was a monopoly. Tobacco was considered a monopoly. Microsoft recently was considered a monopoly. And what the courts do is they step in and they break those companies up into smaller companies. Sorry about that. They break those one companies up into smaller companies so that the wealth is distributed evenly and more equally. Why is it bad? We talked about it. It hurts consumers because we have no choice but to purchase outrageously priced products. It hurts workers because they decrease wages and then promise to raise them again and don't. When people begin to realize how bad monopolies are, they ask the government to step in. And the government is going to pass two pieces of legislation, and we're going to talk about these later on in this unit when we get to the progressive era. But the two pieces of legislation that the government passes are the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, which says that the government can dissolve trusts, it can dissolve monopolies because they hurt consumers and they hurt workers. And the Clayton Antitrust Act, which also prohibited price fixing, which is that deal, we're going to drop prices, okay, to drive the other competitors out of business, and then we're going to jack them back up again. It prohibits that. It also legalized strikes. Okay, now the Clayton Antitrust Act comes around 1914. By 1914, we begin to see labor unions develop. Some people would challenge labor unions because they said labor unions were monopolies because they forced workers to join the union. And since it was a monopoly, strikes should not be allowed. But the Clayton Antitrust Act said, no, actually, strikes are a good thing because it protects workers and it can protect consumers as well. So strikes are okay. Labor unions are not monopolies. Okay. Monopolies are monopolies. Now, again, I don't want you to think that Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, Morgan were bad guys. Okay. Some people have defended them. They were just really, really smart. Okay. Um, but their practices do take advantage of people. All right. Despite the fact that they are giving back to the communities and stuff like that, and they do wonderful things for the communities that they live in, they are taking advantage of people and they are making it hard on consumers. So we got to do something about those practices. Here are some pictures of the houses. This is J.P. Morgan's house in New York. Okay. Um, it's about $103 billion, okay, to build that house, I believe. Here's the Vanderbilt mansion. This is in North Carolina. If you've ever been to the Biltmore, okay, that is the Vanderbilt mansion. And that was a good example of Vanderbilt giving back to the community, because Asheville, which is where the mansion is, there weren't a lot of things in Asheville. But Vanderbilt, to get the mansion built and to entertain people, realized he would need other people in Asheville. So he spent a lot of money on the community to get the community growing so his house could be built. And then once he started having people to his house, there would be things for them to do and support systems in the community, like grocery stores and mail delivery and things like that, to help his visitors. Okay. So that's an example of, hey, these guys are using their money in ways that can help people. Okay, the practice is bad, but they use their money to help people. Here's the Carnegie Castle. Of course, Carnegie, of course, was in steel. It's $297 billion. And there's the Rockefeller Mansion, also in New York. He's our oil baron. It's around $663 billion. Okay, so these guys are not living in shabby little houses. Now, when attention gets focused on monopolies and how bad monopolies are, um, a lot of focus is put in newspapers. Okay, when people begin to realize what monopolies are doing and how they're hurting workers and consumers, editorials get printed and cartoons especially get drawn, trying to demonstrate how bad monopolies are. So what we're going to do, and you don't have to copy anything down, we're just going to talk about four editorial cartoons that begin to kind of attack monopolies and show how bad monopolies are. Now, this first one, this is called the octopus. Now, what company does the octopus represent? Well, if you can see right here, it's an oil well right there, okay. Up here, this is an oil drum. Notice up here you see Standard Oil, okay. So the octopus represents the Standard Oil Company. What objects is the octopus grabbing and controlling? Well, if you look over here, okay, it's headed toward this building right here. I know what that building is. That's the White House. Over here, we've got the Capitol building. Over here, we've got the New York State House. Over here are a bunch of politicians. Over here are some ships, okay? So that's what it's grabbing. Then why is this company a monopoly? Because it's grabbing and controlling all these things, okay? And the implication is it is controlling the government. By reaching out and controlling the Capitol and the New York State House and those politicians, it's controlling the government and it's headed toward the White House. Okay? So, do you think this artist likes monopolies? No. All right. No, he does not. In fact, the fact that the octopus kind of has an angry look on his face, it's grabbing all these things, it's controlling all these things. This is not a flattering picture of monopolies, and shows the danger of monopolies because they can control so much. Okay. So that is the octopus. This cartoon is called The Bosses of the Senate. All right. And what is shown at the back of the Senate? Okay, so this is the Senate. It says there on the sign here, okay, this is the Senate. All right. Who are these guys back here? Those are the monopolies. How do you know? Because it says so on their bellies. Okay, these big fat guys back here are the monopolies. And they're big because they're full of wealth. All right. You got the Steel Beam Trust, you got the Copper Trust, there's Standard Oil. Okay, there's sugar. All right. Paper over here, coal. All right. Who's in the front of the Senate? These guys. Yeah, they're the senators. But notice they're small. So the question becomes, who's in control? The big guys back here, because they're the ones that have the money. Now, notice up here, there's a door that says the people's entrance. But notice that door is closed and there's a lock on it. The monopoly interest is down on the floor and it's open. And all these big guys are coming in. So what is the point of that? What is this cartoon trying to say? Well, number one, it's saying that the monopolies are controlling Congress, they're controlling the Senate. And then number two, it's saying we, the regular people, can't get in because our entranceway is small, it's on the second floor, and it's locked. And who is Congress? Who is the Senate supposed to represent? It's supposed to represent everybody, the people. So that is the key meaning here, is that these big guys, these monopolies that are controlling things, are making it so that us, the regular people, don't have access to our government, the government that is supposed to represent us. So once again, it's not a favorable image of monopolies. This is called What a Funny Little Government. Now, the first question is, who is this guy right here? Well, if you notice, there's this flood of black liquid here. You got these smokestacks in the back, okay? And you can barely see on his collar here, Rockefeller. This is Rockefeller, okay? You got the oil in the foreground, you got those oil smokestacks in the back, and then Rockefeller on the collar. So this is Rockefeller, and of course, what monopoly is Rockefeller in charge of? The oil monopoly. What other objects do you see? You see Capitol building back here. We talked about the flood of oil. We talked about the smokestacks. And notice in the palm of his hand, he's got this other government building, which kind of looks like the White House. Okay. What do you think the relationship between this man and the government is? Where does he have the government? In the palm of his hand. So once again, this cartoon is telling us, be careful. Because not only are monopolies bad for consumers, not only are they bad for workers, but it is entirely possible that because they have the money, they can keep the government in the palm of their hands. So there's another reason we got to beware of monopolies. They can control the government. Now, the last one is J.P. Morgan, or Alexander the Great. That's the title of this, J.P. Morgan or Alexander the Great. Of course, we know this is J.P. Morgan because in his hat band it says, I'm J.P. Morgan. Okay. Notice, and I mentioned this in the last lesson, who does he kind of look like here with the hat and the mustache and things? He looks like the guy from the Monopoly box. Okay. Now, what is he dragging behind him? He's got all kinds of things. We know he's in charge of finance, but he's got railroads. He's got factories. Okay. These buildings back here, remember he bought the steel industry. They kind of look like the steel factory in Pittsburgh. Okay. So he's got all this stuff behind him. Where is he arriving? Well, he's on a dock. And what do we use docks for? To tie up boats. And notice these boats are for sale. And what do we use boats for at this time? Trading, moving people around. So what does this suggest about the control that Morgan has? Yeah, he's got a lot of control. Okay. I mean, he's dragging the trains, he's dragging the factories and stuff like that. And now the fear is he's going after these boats and he's going after trade and transportation. Does this cartoonist like Morgan or not? Probably not. Now, while it's not necessarily I mean, he doesn't demonize Morgan or anything like that. He is getting you to think. Like, we got to watch out, because if this guy controls everything, we're going to always have to go to him. Okay. We got to go to him for railroads. We got to go to him for factories. We got to go to him. If he gets the boats, we're going to have to go to him for shipping and trading and stuff like that. We got to be careful about his control. So, what this artist would probably be in favor of are antitrust legislation like the Sherman Antitrust Act and the Clayton Antitrust Act. Okay. That's probably what he is getting at, is we got to be careful about guys like Morgan, because if they control everything, that's going to hurt us. So we need to pass antitrust legislation. Well, that's monopolies. I hope you enjoyed looking at some of the art and discussing some of the art here. We are going to pick up with more industrialization next week. We're going to be talking about the formation of unions. We're going to be talking about working conditions. We're going to be talking about how not only do workers suffer, but also how consumers suffer because of this. And we're going to pick up with this theme that we need to do something to protect us during industrialization, not just against monopolies, but other dangers as well. So more with industrialization next week.